Good morning, everyone. My name is Rich Gagan, and I'm the AVP of Specialty Lines here at Irwin Siegel Agency. Thank you all for joining us today to learn about our active assailant products. This emerging coverage is important for everyone to consider due to the frequency of attacks occurring throughout the country. Our partners at CJ Coleman and Samphire Risk have put together a program that provides broad coverage at a reasonable cost. We are fortunate to have Hannah Catchpole of Samphire Risk with us today. Hannah is an experienced active assailant underwriter that handles risks in our program. We have purposely kept the content of this webinar brief so that we'll have plenty of time to answer your questions at the end. Please be sure to use the chat feature to ask your questions as they come up. With no further delay, I'd like to introduce Hannah Catchpole.
Thanks, Rich. Hi, everybody. I'm Hannah. I'm one of the lead underwriters on this class of business at Samphire. Samphire, an independent insurance agency focused on insuring people and corporates against malicious and hostile actions. And I've worked closely with CJ Coleman and Irwin Siegel to develop this product in the Lloyd's insurance market. And at the end of today's session, hopefully you'll have a better understanding of the Samphire Protect Safeguard product and the services provided by the responder behind it. So the product has been specifically designed to meet the needs of an insured following the ever-increasing marauding events that are happening across the world, and we're seeing them quite significantly in the United States. And the product is there to provide indemnity against property damage, business interruption, legal liability following a malicious assailant event. So there are dedicated limits to help protect against a catastrophic peril that would otherwise be claimed for under a more generic property or liability policy, where sometimes the cover might be silent, or we're seeing more commonly now cover in those areas tends to be excluded. The key benefits or differentiators of this product is that it sits primary and non-contributory to other insurances, which gives your clients more certainty and peace of mind in the event that an attack would occur, knowing that cover is in place from the ground up. There is 24/7, 365 days emergency response from Merrill Herzog in the event of an incident. We have two unique covers as part of our product, which is malicious threat. So that is cover for threats made against insured people or property, and stalking threat. So that we define as unwanted obsessive attention that puts an insured person in fear or concern for their safety at a place of work. Now, cover for these two scenarios is for response services only. So the biggest benefit that we feel clients have here is being able to mitigate a full active assailant event occurring by taking action at an earlier stage, engaging that response consultant and starting the investigation process at a lot sooner opportunity than local law enforcement might be able to do. As we know, law enforcement everywhere is under increased pressure all of the time. And with these sorts of incidents, there are occasions where they might not have the time or the resource to conduct that necessary investigation into a threat or a stalking threat. But with this cover having those elements of response there, it gives the insured that resource to provide then onto a local law enforcement officer that then can allow them to take action sooner rather than them having to conduct that timely investigation part themselves. The policy also addresses a really key element, which is the duty of care the insured has to their employees and other people on their premises. One of the benefits of this policy is we don't stipulate a minimum number of people for cover to trigger. So I believe a mass shooting is defined in the States as 4 or more fatalities, but this Protect Safeguard will trigger for smaller attacks affecting fewer victims. So there are 3 triggers that are required in order to trigger this policy. the first two sort of come hand in hand. So there needs to be an attack using a weapon. Now, I won't read each of the triggers word for word here, but our definitions we feel are one of the broadest in the market, and the weapon definition isn't specific only guns or knives. So this means that there can be an event that's using a bomb or a knife or a car, for example, and we believe our definition is able to capture most scenarios that involve an active assailant. The third element is the assailant involved. So there needs to be an individual or a group of people that is actively engaged or attempting to kill or cause bodily injury to one person, a group of people, whatever that may look like. And again, stalking, threat, and threat, we discussed those on the slide before. So we've split out Protect, Safeguard into sort of 4 areas to try and make it a little bit more simple in terms of what we're covering. So the first insured loss is an attack at an insured location. So the insured has physical damage to property and contents, business interruption, which is actual income loss or extra expense sustained, legal liability, should your client become obligated to pay damages or anything as a result of an attack, and this includes attorney fees, mediation costs, arbitration costs, and other fees and expenses. The second element of cover is an attack within a 5-mile radius. So this is giving business interruption cover to an insured should an attack or an event happen within a 5-mile radius of one of their locations. So if something were to happen and there was military personnel restricting access to that site, which has also then affected access to the insured's premises, this part of the policy would kick in. They would be able to have their business interruption loss covered, and loss of rent if that's suffered as well. And also there is the option to have additional security. So that might mean getting in contact with the response consultant and looking to see whether they need to put any additional security in place at that location, whether they feel that there might be sort of anything else pertinent at another location that could need some additional security. So the second part of the policy provides cover where the event hasn't happened directly to them. The personal accident benefit is really there, sort of the biggest element around the duty of care to provide the benefits to anybody that is unfortunately caught up in one of these events. So whether it's sort of permanent total disablement, loss of a limb or sight or hearing, or in certain instances fatalities, then there are benefit payments available to the insured within the limit that they choose to buy. And the final element of cover is the response consultants fees. So they are sublimited for stalking, threat, and threat, which we think these are quite sufficient. We can negotiate on them if you have a client that's interested in these elements of cover and you think that they might need something slightly more, then they are negotiable. But generally, these are our standard sublimits, and then the maximum limit for response consultants fees as standard is 1 million. That's the limit that we sort of see most people looking to buy as a starting point, especially for the portfolio that we're looking at with Rich and the team. But we can go higher if required. One of the other really important elements of cover that's available as part of the attack at the insured location is the crisis expenses. So the insured would have up to the full limit of liability for additional security measures and public relations and communications costs or counselling costs for affected people within that insured location element of cover. So Merrill Herzog are the responder that are assigned to respond for this policy in the event of an incident. They are a very well-respected company, US-based company, focusing on sort of the intelligence and commercial risk side of things. They've got a very, very extensive background into these kinds of risks and responding on these, as well as other risks around sort of kidnap for ransom and extortion. Included within the policy and as part of the response for an insured event, there is an initial assessment and support which is available to any insured client, so they can have an initial sort of 30-minute onboarding phone call with the Merrill Herzog team to talk about their current risk mitigation procedures that they have in place, and discuss any sort of areas of concern that they have, or ask Merrill Herzog to help identify any areas that they might be exposed. They have the access to their crisis management team, which are able to help them in the event of an insured incident. So they will send somebody to the location of an incident if needed. They will do fact finding to help local law enforcement find additional information about an incident that's happened, and if that helps sort of lead to any convictions that need to happen as a result of that. They can help provide physical security following an incident. They have many contacts. A lot of them are third-party contractors, but they're able to put in place many different services that might be required that aren't necessarily thought of, that we don't always think about initially when buying this policy, but they're able to help sort of wrap around after an incident to make sure that everything is contained and it's not going to escalate out of any further control. And they can provide post-incident support and advice following any incident as well. There are additional services that are available. We do offer a complimentary call in most circumstances. So if you have somebody that's thinking about buying this cover and they're still unsure, we're very happy to put you in contact with the team at Merrill Herzog and sort of set up that complimentary call, whether it be sort of 10-15 minutes, just to have a chat about their sort of real experience and expertise around what they're seeing at the minute that might be relevant to a particular insured's industry. We're very happy to arrange that. So if that's something that you think might be of interest, please do reach out to Rich and he can help you get that set up. They offer a real range of pre-incident services, which can be really beneficial for insureds that don't necessarily have as much risk mitigation in process. So that can be threat and risk assessments, physical security assessments, sort of roundtable crisis management plans, emergency action plans. It could be specific active assailant training or preparedness training. So they're all additional services that they're able to offer. If you have a client or an insured, it doesn't, whether they buy a policy or not, those services, we can put you in contact for the services if they don't have the insurance policy. But equally, if they look to buy a policy and sort of 6 months in is something that they want to investigate further, then we can help you look into that. So that was a really quick run through. I got through that a lot quicker than I thought, but I'm just going to have a look to see if we've had any questions come through. If you have a submission that you would like us to look at, then please send it through to Rich and the team. We're very happy to have a look at any submission. This really isn't targeted at a particular type of insured. The risk is there and open to many different industries. So if you have a client, or if you have a client that you think is particularly exposed to this type of risk, then please do reach out to Rich and the team. We're happy to have a conversation around it and help you frame that conversation with your client should you want to sort of broach the subject around this type of policy. If you have any questions, you can use the question box to pop them in and I'll happily answer any of them.
Great, thank you, Hannah. That was fantastic. We do have a few questions here. The first one I have here is, would the policy provide any coverage for an incident that happens off-site on, let's say, like a field trip?
Yes. So there is off-site cover there. So the personal accident and response fees are included within their definition, and the liability section of the policy also has a section in the wording that refers to that extending to off-site liability for people within the care, custody, or control of the insured.
Great. Would an attack need to be considered terrorism to have coverage on this policy?
No. So I know when we look at things like TRIA cover, it has to fit the definition of a terrorist incident, but our product doesn't. So it would extend to cover a sort of a defined act of terrorism, but this picks up anything really from sort of much lower level terrorist crime. So it doesn't need to be considered an act of terrorism for the policy to trigger.
Great. I have someone asking, will this be recorded? Yes, it is being recorded, and we'll make it available to all of the attendees. And really, anyone who's interested in it, we could always send it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else is asking for a copy of the slides. So, I mean, the recording will have that. Someone has asked, what are the submission requirements?
So not too much, really. We have Rich has a proposal form that you can complete, but generally we sort of look at the total number of exposed persons, whether that's on a daily, weekly, yearly basis, the number of locations, the state that they're located in, and a description of the insured's business and what it is they're doing. If they're looking for off-site cover, then as much detail as we can get around that, whether it's sort of field trips, like you said before, Rich, to residential trips, or whether it's anything sort of bigger on a wider basis. As much as information as we can get is useful, and a summary of values if they're looking to cover the property damage and the business interruption loss.
And would this coverage be primary in the event of attack?
Yes. So the other insurance clause that we have does stipulate that this sits primary. We're more than happy if there's a need for that not to be the case, which we don't find very often. I think it's always preferable that this policy sits primary, mainly because it has a much lower deductible than a GL policy. But we're very happy for this policy to sit primary. But if that needs to be changed for a particular insured, then we're very happy to do that.
Great. Someone's asking, isn't this coverage already included in the GL policy?
It's a tricky one. Yes, I don't think we can say for sure at the minute, and certainly what I've seen in sort of the last 6 months, especially, not just from you guys at Irwin Siegel, Rich, but I mean a lot of other brokers in the London market. A lot of the GL carriers seem to be starting to apply firearms exclusions to the GL policies and assault and battery exclusions as well. And while this policy isn't specifically designed and doesn't cover traditional assault and battery, the firearms exclusions are then sort of taking that element of cover out of the GL. And even if they are still covered, 9 times out of 10, the deductible on the GL policy would probably be about as much potentially as some of the limits that we look at selling on this policy.
Great. Someone's asking, can applications be provided? Also asking about some marketing material. After the webinar, we will reach out to everyone that attended and send all of that to you, as well as my contact information if you have any questions that you want to reach out on. Is coverage available in all states?
Yeah. So each state is rated on its own merit, and we're constantly monitoring activity across the states, and I mean across the world really. even just this week. I mean, we've had another incident this week in London, and we're seeing it becoming sort of more of a frequent incident in the UK as well. So yes, it's available in every state. If you have insured clients that have sort of global operations, we're very happy to look at this on a global placement basis as well, if that's required.
Excellent. We have someone asking if we're able to quote from another broker or carrier's application.
Yes, yep, absolutely, no problem.
And could you just talk about the emergency response when they have a threat?
Sure. So, what in the instance there's a threat to carry out an attack. So, if an insured company has reason to believe, and it doesn't need to be it doesn't need to be a written or a verbal threat, but if there is enough evidence for them to believe that they are at serious risk of an attack happening, the policy documents have an emergency phone number, so they can pick up the phone to Meryl Herzog and begin that conversation, talk to them about their concerns. And Meryl Herzog have sort of a really wide range of expertise, from cyber experts and analytic experts and all of this, and they will start looking into the insured's concerns and start looking into the threat, and they can advise whether they believe it's a credible threat, at which point further action can look to be taken, or whether it's something that doesn't need to be taken seriously, is perhaps a hoax, which we're happy to rather the policy respond at an early stage for a low limit of response fees to realise that it's a hoax than not respond and be unsure, and something end up like a full active assailant event happening.
Okay. Someone is asking if there's a situation where an employee causes the active assailant event, the insured would be covered, but not the employee that caused the incident. Is that correct?
Yes. So the employee wouldn't be. There's an exclusion under the policy which excludes any benefit towards the assailant themselves, but the policy would trigger for the insured who is employing that person. I mean, in that instance, I would expect that the main concern for them here would be litigation from other employees around having an employee who's perhaps not of sound mind in their employ at the time of the incident. But yeah, that is correct. It would extend to all others involved within their care, custody, or control.
Great. Someone is asking, are there any exclusions for drug rehab settings, including facilities that have condition of release inpatient residences or inpatient facilities?
No, we don't have any specific exclusions around that. The only thing that we have, there is an exclusion, and forgive me that I don't have the exact wording to hand right now, but it's around whether an incident is sort of related to a criminal act. So if an incident had come off of the back of a drug deal that was happening, which isn't necessarily relevant to a drug rehabilitation centre, but if that were to be the incident that something happened, then it wouldn't be covered. But purely within the facility, no, this is not. Although a lot of the risks that we look at for Irwin Siegel around that human and social services sector, there is no specific sector exclusions within the policy. But I'm happy for Rich to share a copy of the policy wording if he wants, for sort of full sight of the exclusions.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We'll include that in the email that'll go out to everyone. Another question here is, would the policy cover senior directors being threatened by an employee?
Yes, I believe it would. I don't think we've ever discussed that particular situation. Off the top of my head, I'm going to take it away and I'll come back to you to double check, Rich. But as far as I'm aware, the cover will trigger.
So we'll look into that answer a little deeper, and we'll include the question and the answer in the response that we send out.
So it was director's threat from an employee. I'm assuming that's a threat to commit an active assailant attack, not a general threat for. I'll cover that off in an email to you, Rich, and we can go back to the attendees on that.
Great. Someone's asking, what type of businesses do you see purchasing this coverage most frequently?
That's a really good question, but probably the hardest one to answer, because it really is so varied. Obviously, we look at the human and social services book, which has been really successful, and we do see a lot of those buying, but that's very varied in terms of whether that's sort of elderly care, disability care, drug and alcohol rehabilitation centres. We've placed cover for municipalities before for certain one-off or just a selection of events. We've placed for medical facilities, hospitals. More recently, we've had some inquiries for gun ranges come in, schools, preschools. It really is, it's very varied. If there's ever any sort of concern or question about whether you have an insured that should be buying, please do reach out to Rich and the team, because I'm very happy if there's a sort of a buying group that you're trying to target, very happy to work with you and use the advice of Meryl Herzog there to help you put something together to aid those conversations.
Terrific. Someone is asking, what is the minimum premium?
Another good question, and another one that's very difficult to answer. We don't have a set minimum premium. It really does depend on the type of insured that are looking to buy and the limit that they're buying. I'd say as an average, maybe somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000, but I mean, take that with a pinch of salt, because it does really depend on the risk details that we're seeing. But there's probably an average that we can use for sort of somewhere between a $1 million limit.
Great. Someone is asking if we're able to provide a quote for restaurants.
Yes, yeah, restaurants are fine. We've done quite a few restaurants and bars, so that's no problem.
Okay. Someone is asking if there's an incident like the Boston Marathon bombing where a backpack is left unattended with a bomb inside, with no person performing the active event, would this be covered?
Yes, it would, because there would still need, the intent is there from somebody at some point. So from our perspective, although there's no person present, no sort of physical person present at the time of the attack, the driving force behind that has come from a person. Somebody has initiated that event. So yes, that would be covered.
Great. And I'm trying to scroll through the questions here. I think we've gotten to all of them. But again, if anyone does have any questions, if you're interested in getting terms for active assailants, please do reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you with it. I'd like to thank Hannah for her time today and presenting to us. She did a wonderful job, and looking forward to working with you all very soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Rich, for organising.
You're welcome. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.